Good day. First, before I start, I would have liked to actually thank the organizers for putting together a female-orientated seminar. So we could actually listen to great leadership of the females. Driving our cities. Let's put our hands together for all the women driving this change. All right, let's go back to our stuff because the time is tight. And I'm going to talk about an issue that mostly everybody thinks it's a rural issue, not an urban one. How many of you in the room know about Plantagon? Could you please raise your hands? That's great. Plantagon is a Swedish company founded back in 2008. And we are a CSR-based company working with values of social responsibility and corporate social responsibility, and we are an innovation leader, and our area is feeding the cities. Let's see why food and why cities. Before going to that one, this is how we work. We work in a triple helix bottom line. We work with different companies, we work with cities, and we work also with research centers and universities. And one of the most important partners for us has been Sweco, which is the biggest engineering firm in Europe and consultation company. And we've been highly praised for the innovation that we took from, and we talked about urban food inside the cities. But before going to our innovation, I would love to give you a background, why food and why cities. So let's start with food. Food is a fundamental human right. We need to eat basically every day. It doesn't matter where you are or who you are or where you come from. It's one of the biggest global challenges, and it's been the United Nations' first development goal and later the #2 sustainable development goal as well. But this is one of the areas that mostly cities basically neglect. There are a lot of different challenges associated to food and our food systems. We have a lot of problems with growing population. We already have 1 billion people under the hunger line, but worse than that, we have 1.5 billion people above the obesity line. So there is a very huge imbalance in developing and developed countries. So by 2050, we're going to be 9 million people, 2 billion more mouths to feed. And urbanization also drives a lot of people from rural areas to cities, which most of them are farmers, especially in developing countries. Climate change is putting a lot of pressure on our rural population, especially in developing countries, as you could see in the map. And in that system, we also waste a lot of food, bringing the food from the rural areas to the urban areas, which 70% of the total population of the world is living by 2050. Our agricultural land, as you could see, the green areas are the agricultural land. And if you put it like that, we have a big farm, size of South America, producing greens, and we have Africa as our barn. Just, husbandry of animals. So that's how our world looks like. If we have this South America as a base for a farm, with 2 billion born people, we need land size of Brazil to produce the food if we're going to stick to our traditional farming practices, and we don't have that land. Water scarcity is another issue that we are facing. We don't have water, and a good example of that could be United States, California, and the water scarcity issue. It just, drains a lot of farmland in those areas, and the bad thing about that is most of that is happening in the global south. Food security, we could look at this map and see we are doing very good in the developed world. North America, Western Europe, Scandinavia, Australia, Japan, and South Korea, all of us are food secure. We have good supply of food because we import a lot of food. This is the food globalization map. If you take that green dot as the whole import of United States in case of food supply, each yellow dot just represents 10% of that, and the red one is 1% of that. Just look at Scandinavia. Sweden, Denmark. Denmark is the one actually doing really good. Norway and the other ones. We're not doing good, really. And that's how we move the food from one place to the other. And this is actually like a result of cheap supply of food from the developing countries for us. It's very risk associated, these systems. It's a lot of pressure on your biodiversity and other natural resources that we don't have unlimited of those. And this is not sustainable to import food from farms like that, or this monocultural farms in the United States where it comes like tons of corn every day. Let's go to the cities. Cities are important. My co-speakers talked about like how many people live inside the cities and so on, and the global carbon emission and so on. But these cities are only 1.2% of the total surface of our planet. Not that big, but 75% of our carbon emissions in case of consumption, because everybody calculates on production, comes from those cities. And I mean, more people tend to live inside those cities. But why food? Food is very important because it's 1/3 of our carbon footprint of every city in sort of consumption, and it's 50% of the global carbon footprint. 50% of global carbon footprint. And without solving issues of sustainable food, we're not going to go down in our carbon footprint. A lot of people tend to ignore that because it's coming from another place. So sorry for the language. It's taking the shit in the corridor. But there is no corridor. It's a globe that is ours. And any change in any corner of that changes that for us. What are the solutions? We tried many solutions. We tried to clear-cut rainforests. We tried to have like more chemicals and get more food. We tried GMO. But we never tried to actually be more innovative, optimize our value chain, throw away less food, and work on our consumption patterns, what we eat, and how much carbon footprint it has. The principles for Plantagon are innovation, value chain optimization, bringing consumers and producers together, and importance of cities. A city. It's around the people. It's about economy, society, environment. There are a lot of different layers, horizontal and vertical. I'm going to talk about the hardcore stuff. There are a lot of things that people talk about: waste management, urban functions, ICT, energy, all of these different things, transportation, how we could be smarter in this and in that. But nobody talks about sustainable food inside the city, balancing production and consumption. I'm gonna show you like what it means for a livable city, which basically like brings food to table for every people, and the meaning of that for a sustainable city, which is basically like balancing consumption and production, one of the SDGs, how we could have a more balanced consumption and production. Nobody talks about that. Resilient cities, which is more about local food systems. And then smart cities, which is more about multidisciplinary planning, using the resources that you have inside the city to produce something out of that, instead of seeing something as waste. What the hell is waste? I mean, there's a huge opportunity. These are like all opportunities. There is no waste inside the city. That's something that we should realize, that we just have possibilities. And that's something that we are focusing on doing by help of something called agritecture. And then you could introduce food also to a platform of a city. But what is agritecture? Agritecture is a combination of agriculture, technology, and architecture to put food inside a building in a city. That's something that we work with at Plantagon. There are different types of urban food. There are types that are like hobby for rich, like gardening in your backyard, having a box so you could just go and have like 3 carrots per summer, play some guitar with your neighbors and stuff like that. And sometimes you talk about like producing tons of food inside the city. I'm going to talk about that. I'm working with some committees to standardize that as well at local level with the Swedish Standards Institute, the European Platform for Standardization, and also ISO. And we have many cities who are going to look at their indicators for sustainable food, and hands down, Oslo is the last city that actually joined this platform. So that's really positive. I mean, seeing like all of these cities are going to actually report on if they're doing good there or not. Because food enables sustainable and smart cities. It could be an enabler that actually builds up a project around food. And that's only production. If you want me to talk about consumption, call me another day, I will do that for you. But how does Plantagon do that? I have a movie that I would love to air, so I would just ask our colleagues behind the scene to play that for you, and then we take the rest.
Recent UN estimates show that by 2050, the world's population will reach 10 billion people. By then, 70% of us will live in cities. However, with traditional farming practices and current consumption patterns, the world's arable land will not be enough to produce sufficient food for all of us. Plantagon's mission is to be a driving force for sustainable solutions to feed future cities of the world. To solve this great global challenge, we'll need transformative solutions, and the efficient use of water, waste, and energy will be a prerequisite for long-term survival. We need solutions that will use emissions and waste from cities in sustainable ways, and we need to work together to create a joint platform for technological, political, and market-driven development. An innovative collaboration within the Swedish clean tech industry created the Plantagon solution for industrial and scalable solutions. However, to really make this technology work, one needs to combine competencies from many different areas within energy, biology, waste management, and infrastructure. We put all our efforts into developing industrial, scalable, and economically viable solutions for the future cities of the world. And we can integrate greenhouses into city infrastructure. Real estate companies invest heavily in cities, yet we have used technology to add even more value to their development projects. This is our demonstration plant for a temperate zone, being built in Linköping, 2 hours south of Stockholm. It's a 60-meter or 65-yard tall office building, producing 500 tons or 1.1 million pounds of vegetables per year on its south facade. To illustrate how energy use and CO2 emissions could be lowered, we initiated this project as an industrial symbiotic system, a partnership between Plantagon, the local energy company, and the local biogas plant. The greenhouse uses district heating supplied by waste burnt at the power plant, and we also receive excess heat and carbon dioxide from a nearby biogas plant. What's left over from the greenhouse goes into the biogas digester. This way, we turn 3 different waste products into tradable goods and make environmental work profitable. Now, since we've started the project, we've developed even smarter solutions. In this pioneering project, all disciplines have to work together: architecture, construction, electrical, waste, water, industry, and others, all in one place. The greenhouse is designed to let as much sunlight in as possible. Yet, due to the multiple-story design, LED lights are used to provide additional lighting, without creating as much heat as traditional lighting. However, from time to time, we have more heat than we can use, and this is stored in boreholes beneath the building to warm the office side of the building during winter. Vertical farming in a closed environment, free of pesticides and other pollutants, requires a double-skin facade. Otherwise, it will not work. This technology allows the control of airflow and heat in an economically and environmentally viable way. Plants consume CO2, and so we need to boost the levels of CO2 in the greenhouse. And since the cleanest CO2 there is comes from our own breath, we push the CO2 emitted from the hundreds of people working in the building to the plants. And we take the oxygen given off by the plants and push it into the office building. This sets a new standard in indoor environments. It's almost like creating a lung for the city. Let's go inside and see how it works. It follows the law of the seed. Everything is designed to optimize conditions for the plant. Seeds are grown in trays covered by small cells filled with pumice. The seeds are then moved to a germination chamber in order to give them an optimum start in life. After germination, the young plant is moved to a larger, expandable growing pot, which Plantagon calls a U-pot. After this, the plants are transported to the 16th floor, where they're placed on the vertical food production line. We irrigate by filling the cultivating track with about 2 centimeters or 1 inch of water. The excess water is drained away. Water, not absorbed by the plants, is then filtered and reused on the first floor. As the plants grow, they need more space. By optimizing spacing in 2 directions during plant growth, Plantagon significantly increases production. The individual plants are removed from their growing pots, and the pumice is sterilized and recycled. We'll invite local organic growers to sell their produce at our Planta store. Or why not enjoy the view from the Urban Farmers Sky Bar? In short, what we have shown here is a profitable, super green real estate and urban farming solution. One that produces the best indoor climate for both people and plants, and makes extremely efficient, local, safe food production possible. A solution that will put food on our plates for decades to come. We save 3.6 million kilometers or 2 million miles of transportation, 1,000 tons of CO2 emissions, 50 million liters or 13 million gallons of water, and 60,000 square meters or 15 acres of land. With this transformative solution, we produce 100% clean food, free of pesticides and other pollutants, for thousands of people, using fewer resources than any other solution on the planet. It's scalable, efficient, and it's fresh. During the next 15 years, the city will undergo major development. Then, we'll not only store our excess energy, but sell it to our neighbors. Perhaps this will be the first truly symbiotic city in the world. It's something we not only dream about, but something we're working hard to realize every day, in everything we do. Plantagon Urban Farming. Growing soon in a city near you.
This is like only a small bit of the puzzle that we need. Like a study shows that 20% of our agriculture needs to move inside our cities. And this is a way that you could do that in a tense, environment and produce safe food for people. The time is tight, so I'm going to leave the stage to the next one, or actually wait for our moderator to ask her questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This project puts my own one salad a bit of perspective.
Yeah.
The one I managed to farm this year. There's a question for you coming up from the audience, and that is about the food itself, how our changing awareness of food.
Okay.
And our eating habits, how that will affect future predictions
Exactly.
of what kind of food and what type of food we need and how much.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good question, because one of the things that I said was changing our consumption patterns. And consumption patterns mean eating better option, choosing better option. But to begin with that, I mean, you can't always put the responsibility on the consumers. Ask them to go to the supermarket, make the most eco-friendly choice and pay double for that. Why should every time that end up actually on us to do the good thing? How would cities plan to provide you with zones that you have access to eco-friendly food? Food that is produced inside your city, local, around your city, for example. Like to take away this food desert, so you end up with better options. How do we actually try to put our resources somewhere that you could actually make a better choice without costing you more? And then how do you educate the people, the citizens, that actually could, by themselves, tell which food is the best? Because I hear about this policy, we should put like 300% tax on meat. Why? I crave a good steak from time to time. Like nobody could take it from people to make their options. But if you know about that, you make the better choice yourself. So cities are responsible for putting a fat budget on educating people, doing this, and having the right infrastructure for their cities to actually meet these sustainable development goals that they talk a lot about, with balance between production and consumption.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
I hope this transfers from some kind of science fiction into reality.
Yeah.
Because who wouldn't want to live like this?
Exactly. That's a project that hopefully is going to be in place by beginning of 2018, city of Linköping in Sweden, 2 hours south of Stockholm. So hopefully it's not going to be science fiction soon.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Thank you.
Sepehr Mousavi.